Hi, so today I'm going to be sharing a little bit about teaching in tandem, coordinating instruction across languages in a dual language program. However, our original plan was to share some of our work of what happens inside the classroom, but due to the circumstances of practically everyone teaching online, we have kind of adjusted this to be more relevant to what's happening in the teaching in tandem world today. So basically, we've been working on this several years, the concept of teaching in tandem through workshops, and have learned that one of the things that we really feel strongly is that um, many say that co-teaching in a dual language is like a marriage, but we think of it more like a co-parenting relationship. And that metaphor is better because we're focusing on the children as being the center of our relationship. So without going into much detail, just with the time restrictions, I'll just share that we applied the co-parenting framework to create a co-teaching framework. And a lot of our work is based on this, and I'll go over some of these domains later on in the presentation. But basically, we created a planning cycle on how the partners can work together in teaching in tandem to have a successful partnership. Again, I'm not going to walk through the planning cycle today, but this is just the work that we've been doing so far and how my partner and I are using it. So Liz and I want to take what we have studied and worked on in terms of the partnership in teaching in tandem in a dual language classroom. And today I want to talk a little bit about how we have applied some of those concepts and ideas into our new style of learning and teaching online. And the challenges that are faced as we do that. So I want to share my experience and what worked well and what we want to do better when we start back after spring break. By no means are we experts at this, but our goal remains the same, and we are taking on each new challenge together. So early on, we had really lofty goals, and we wanted to try to simulate our classroom in an online experience. We wanted to have every subject and every concept taught, but we realized quickly that we had to lower those expectations for ourselves in order to maintain some sanity, for us to get some sleep at night, and to continue loving our jobs, because we were very overwhelmed and overworked those first couple of days. We also had to realize the varying circumstances in our students' homes. Every child has a different set of circumstances and how they're limited access to technology, their parents working, siblings also using their devices, and the levels of stress and concern for our students and family. So what we wanted to do was kind of take a step back and look at what was most important. And we realized that for us, the most important thing is that we didn't want to lose sight of our main objective of teaching in tandem together in a dual language class, now online, to dissolve into more parallel teaching, where Spanish is happening over here and I don't know what's happening, and English is happening with me and my partner doesn't know what's happening. So that was the biggest key for us, was to continue to maintain that type of partnership. And so that's kind of what I'm going to share today and walk through some of the ways that we've been able to do that. So let's start with curriculum. So for us, planning for curriculum changed quite a bit in what that looked like and how we did it together. So there was a big adjustment for us in working on what content we were going to teach our students in the videos that we decided to make each day. And as I said, we started with very big vision of what that looked like, and trying to get all of the material that we had planned to be teaching at this time out and give those lessons to our students. I teach in a 50-50 model where half the subjects are in English and half are in Spanish. And we usually teach with thematic instruction and project-based learning. And we found, we also do writing workshop alternating day by day. And it was pretty hard to transfer to independent work at home. So we worked together to come up with the most essential subjects and then created lessons and focused on those objectives. And was it perfect? Absolutely not. Did we learn a lot? Yeah. We realized, number one, the importance to continue best practices in dual language was really, really important, because not only are we teaching our students, language learners, in both languages, but or one or the other, but that their parents are now supporting them. I teach kindergarten, so there's a good bit more parent involvement in getting the devices ready, getting the materials ready for each lesson. And we found that there's a big learning curve for the parents as well. And we needed to make sure that we had really explicit instructions in both languages for the parents to hear. And then that we continued with scaffold instruction for our language learners. This was going to look a lot different at home, talking to your students without that feedback. But what we wanted to make sure that we did was to maintain the same types of lessons that we did in our classrooms. One thing I realized in the first week when I did one lesson that had a song, which I typically have all the time going on in my classroom, but I had a song, I read a story, and then I asked a few comprehension questions at the end. When I realized, I got some feedback from a parent that his child is actually learning in English and in Spanish, but it helped me to realize how vital it was to have more scaffolding in the videos as I would do in my classroom. So he said, we got to the end and you asked, what does the author do? And he said, he didn't know. He doesn't know what the author does. And that was the focus of my lesson. I sang a story at the beginning and then told what the author did before I read the book. And then at the end, I asked the question. But I realized that I didn't have the word author with emotion, with a picture card, to really hit home that particular question that I was wanting my students to be able to answer as I normally would do in the classroom. So again, I feel like it's really important that we focus on breaking things down even further, so that we make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our learners. So that was a big key takeaway for me in one of the first few days, was making sure that everyone's getting what they need. And that kind of moves along to my next point, that we were, for the last 2 weeks, creating kind of one-size-fits-all lessons. And what we've realized in our reflections on that are that in our classrooms, our kids are not one-size-fits-all, and we have levels from most basic, first-year language learners to obviously proficient native speakers and quite high levels in both languages. So the way we're going to tackle that is through more small group instruction, more individualized instruction based on the levels of our students. And one way we're going to start launching, a baby step for us, is to create some choice boards. So we had already kind of dabbled with choice boards in math and science activities, but we're going to add a variety of levels of choice boards. So what we're going to start with is, a basic choice board for the students that are in the most basic levels and academic levels, and then on grade level, and then an advanced choice board. And so we'll do it similarly to how we do our stations in class, where we have options 1, 2, or 3, or different options for the kids to choose from. And what we're going to do for these choice boards is just send the choice boards to the particular students that need it. So for the lower academic level students, I will just send the most basic choice board, and for the on grade level, send the 2, and then for the highest group, I will send all 3 to give them options of things they can work on. Curriculum planning was kind of challenging because what we found was that our templates for planning were not exactly working for us in terms of how we were planning out our day. So we dabbled with a couple of online documents, and neither one of us felt like we found exactly the perfect fit. So we both ended up writing out our lesson plans, kind of old school paper and pen, and I created a system of checklists. One, I have the lesson plan ready. One check was I have the lesson plan ready. One check was I have the materials ready to make my video. 3, my video is made. My lesson has, the video has been made for my lesson. 4, my materials on our resource center are ready. And then the 5th check was my assignment has been posted on Seesaw. So that was kind of how I organized myself when going over lesson planning and then completing the instruction process and getting it to my students. My lessons were scribbled on pieces of paper, and I just wrote down my day, math, science, writing workshop, and then I wrote my objectives and a little note for myself about what the lesson would be. So what we found was that our normal planning for curriculum did not, the style that we had been using and the formats that we were using didn't work for us, and it was fine for us to kind of just do what we needed to do to get it done. And one of the things, again, through reflection, we found that we want to really make sure that we're sharing our documents with one another. So we're still trying to figure out exactly how that's going to look, but we think it's really important that we share our documents for planning with one another so that we are really aligned in what content we're teaching. What we kind of did was just text message like a little outline to one another each day, like what we're going to do for the following day, so that we were aligned, and that, you know, we both weren't doing a read aloud about the same topic, but that it was more complementary of the other. As I said, we do thematic instruction, and so we want to make sure that our lessons do complement one another, and that our objectives, because we have so few when we made this transition, we have to really be looking at those objectives and making sure that we're choosing the ones that are most vital. Okay, so I'm going to move on and talk a little bit about how we decided on instruction and what formats we use, what platforms we use. So if you're not already using Seesaw and don't know about Seesaw, it's a great tool that we were already using in our classrooms, mainly for our students to share their work from stations or centers or independent work. And we would use that as an assessment tool, or just to keep track, informal assess what the students were learning and what they were getting completed in their independent or small group times. So just to kind of give you a quick rundown, Seesaw is just an application that students can journal their work, and you can also create assignments or select assignments that are already listed in the Seesaw library. And so this is where we posted our lessons. We uploaded videos into Seesaw and then put the instructions for the activity for the student to complete. So for one example, as I shared earlier about a read aloud that I did, the video was me singing a song about the author and illustrator, and then after I sang the song, I shared the author and illustrator of the book that I read, and then at the end I asked the comprehension questions in the video. Those same questions and instructions were listed on the Seesaw assignment, and then my students were able to either video record or voice record or even write their response to the comprehension questions. So that was, one activity that was about a 10-minute video with probably about 5 minutes of answering the comprehension questions. Now, once the students upload their activities to Seesaw, you have the ability to record a voice recording to respond to them, or you can make a comment back to them. So in addition to Seesaw, we have a resource center that we created, a website where all of our day's lessons with materials and information about the lesson are listed on the resource center. In addition, we had links for additional activities that you could do at home for online learning, or key resources like Rad's Kids or Go Noodle, or social emotional learning opportunities at home, and different resources that we would put all there on the resource center. That was the kind of home base for each day's lessons. And then what we do is each one of us make the Seesaw videos to do the lessons, and then we also about the second week, we had our act together enough that we were able to hold our morning meeting sessions. It looked a lot different than a classroom morning meeting, but we wanted to offer space for all of the children to see one another. So we would ask a question of the day, like we did in our classroom, but this time, rather than write their responses on the board, they shared their responses with their classmates. And then after the question of the day, we would sing a greeting song, we would ask the question of the day, and we had some sort of presentation. Normally our kids present something in our morning meeting, but we actually did the presentations of maybe an introduction of something that was to come later in the day, or just a fun song or game to play. And then we would open it up for announcements. And it was great for the kids to share things like, I lost a tooth, or my dog's having puppies, or something fun to kind of connect with each other in those morning meeting spaces. We did not, but plan to start with our small group guided reading and possibly math. I'm hoping that we can get ourselves together to hold these small group activities in the day, again, based on levels, so that we can meet our students where they are and really truly differentiate instruction rather than that one size fits all that we did over the last 2 weeks. We also have parent workshops. We feel that because it's kindergarten and there is more hands-on with the parents are more hands-on, we felt that it was important to also give workshops for them and give really clear instructions on what it would look like to work with their students or their children. So for example, one of our workshops is going to be on writing workshop and what that looks like at home. Many parents feel like their kids need to spell all of the words right, or have a complete story by the time they're finished. And so we want to walk through and give a little mini lesson to them as well on what writing workshop looks like for young students and emerging writers. Another one we had was just on how to use the resources. We have one scheduled to do on social emotional learning and things that they can do to practice those skills at home through role play and games, and just asking questions and talking to their kids to make sure that those needs are also being met. We stuck with the technology that we knew and that we knew our students were very comfortable with. We think that was really key to making sure that they felt happy and safe when they were working at home, and not stressed. Let them see you as much as possible. So some of the feedback we got was that it was so important to see not only us but their friends often throughout the day, and they would see our videos as they were working, and every day we had that morning meeting space. So we would also do the voice recordings, and we would send quick text videos to give some praise and encouragement through the day, just a quick message to say, hey, and I'm thinking about you. And I think that goes a really long way with distance learning and not having that actual physical connection with your kids and being in their space, but that they see your face. That really helps a lot. Differentiating instruction. That was a big key for us, a big key takeaway for us after 2 weeks of doing this, that we were scrambling to get all of this done in that 2 weeks time, but now we realize how important it is that moving forward we can do a couple of those whole group, but it's going to be much more important to do more small group instruction, and we can give assignments from there to each level of our students. Just a quick note about assessment. We created a tracking document for the Seesaw assignments that we did. It was a great way to see who was working at home and what challenges they might be facing. It was very obvious. I could see, student A turned in 5 assignments today and student B turned in 1. So quick check-in, hey, how's it going? How can I help you with your online assignments today? Was just an assessment, a tracking tool to at first assess who was working from home. But then what we discovered was we could also take that exact document and make comments about the actual work that we were seeing the students produce. Yes, they got it. No, they didn't. And then do some informal assessments on the student work. For us, Family communication has been really key in all of this, and we feel that our classroom, and including our parents, are a community, and we wanted to maintain that. So we stayed in pretty constant contact with our families. We sent them a message every afternoon with the next day's lessons, and every morning to send the videos. So we did that through a WhatsApp blast, a text blast message. I think it's called broadcasting, actually. And if you're not familiar with WhatsApp, it's like an international text messaging system, and it works a lot like regular text. But we created at the beginning of the year a group for all of our parents where we are administrators, and we just send the messages out so they don't reply back to the broadcast list. So it's not a whole bunch of conversation happening. It's just the information that's really important to get out to them. And for us, that's really a key way to make sure that the parents are receiving the information from us. In WhatsApp, you have the ability to kind of view all of the people who have read your message and which ones it's been delivered to and unread. So we could even follow up with those parents and just say, hey, we want to make sure everything's going okay. We sent a message this morning. We could do a phone call or an email or another form of communication with that individual family if we knew that they weren't reading our daily messages or any of the important information we were sending to our class. Like I said, we started over the last couple of weeks doing workshops with our parents, having just Q&A sessions with them to walk through the technology, to walk through all of our resources, how to use Seesaw, and we're improving on ways that we can to have these workshops for them. We sent a survey to get feedback after the last 2 weeks of online learning, and we're receiving those survey responses now to help us to make adjustments to what we're doing based on their feedback and the workload for the students, the morning meeting space, what times work for them for small group instruction, and what parent workshops they wanted to see get more information on. So for example, we could do one on online learning tools. We could do one on social emotional learning. We could do one on helping to create a schedule and routine in your home. Some of the parents have already started responding, and we know that we'll take that feedback and see which ones are most important so that we can make sure that we're helping meet their needs too, because we're all in this together, and now we're relying quite heavily on their support. One of the biggest keys for us in our Tandem relationship has been to make sure we're always maintaining clear and constant communication, and we have formulated a way to make that work through distance learning by, again, WhatsApp or text messaging each other, emails, sharing documents and resources that we find, and having frequent conference calls. So we made sure to have a conference call every day to kind of map out what was working, what wasn't, and then also to talk about our students. We found it was really important through discussion. We learned, like, hey, I'm getting a lot of assignments turned in Spanish. Let's touch base with this family and see if we can help them to try to encourage their child to do it in English, or vice versa. She might have a family that doesn't speak Spanish, and so they're just not completing the Spanish assignments. And so we work together to check in with one another about how our students were doing each day, and helping to work on modifying our lesson planning. A couple other things that were super important for us were to maintain support for each other. My teaching partner was working from home with a 3-year-old, and her husband was away from work the entire time most of the time that we were engaged in these 2 weeks of online learning. And I was fortunate enough to have mine at home with my 4-year-old. So I was a lot more flexible and could help to ease some things from her. But also we worked ways to work together, like nap times or after bedtime. We adjusted our schedule to support the ways that we could work most efficiently and, without the distractions. And we supported one another. Sometimes our daughters would talk during our calls, but and just show their face and say hi, which was great. But we were just really flexible, and I think that was a big key for us working together. One important thing that Maria and I really wanted to make sure that we didn't leave out was the open and honest conversation about what was happening. And while we teach kindergarten, we still wanted to allow the students to have a voice and discuss their feelings about what this is looking like in our lives right now. And so we talked about the fact that we don't know when we're going to return back to our classroom, and that can be kind of scary. And some of the kids shared their thoughts and asked questions, and some we had the answers to and some we didn't. And we felt that it was a really great opportunity to have the difficult conversation and let the kids know that we're here with them with their thoughts. So, I think it's really important that kids feel like their feelings and emotions are important. And for us, we wanted to hear from them and let them know that we're all in this together. And speaking of that, I think, we all can find solace in the fact that we are all in this together, teachers, educators, students, the whole world. And that can also be quite horrifying. And I think we need to allow that grief and that sadness and that overwhelm to be exposed, because that's where we are right now. And Maria and I have had several heart-to-heart conversations to talk openly about, all of the emotions that come with this. And we think that it's part of the process is expressing those thoughts and feelings and accepting the reality of what this is, and then we can move on in a positive way and continue to do what we do, which is to make sure that we are loving on and caring for our students. So just to wrap things up, I have a couple of a top 10 for working together on distance teaching, and some things that have been really important for us. Thank you so much for sticking around for the presentation. And if you're interested, you can check out our blog, dual-language-tandemteaching.com. We're updating it right now, actually, to include some of the information from this and a little bit more, this presentation with a little bit more detail. And we'd love to hear feedback on what other things would be helpful for teachers